Morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Schilowitz. It's This Week in XR. Today is July 15th, 2022. Let's take care of a little housekeeping before we get into the news. We have a new sponsor, Zapper. Let me say that they are the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio. If you've got an AR project in mind, they're the team to deliver it with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. That's their agency. Their award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, where you can make your own AR, and ZapBox, the most affordable mixed reality headset. We've talked about this in the past.
We've used it from time to time.
They've got your XR strategy covered. Start creating at ZapWorks or contact them directly at zapper.com. And of course, let us thank our friends at Verbella. Our guest today is Jason Warnke. He is Accenture's Senior Managing Director for Global IT and Digital Experiences. He'll be speaking with us about how Accenture is leaning into VR for training and collaboration.
It's a very popular topic, Charlie, the training and collaboration.
I spent all of 2020 talking about it.
Yes, indeed.
So it's good to see you this morning.
Absolutely, you too.
Lots of interesting news this week. I don't know whether I'd call it all big news, but interesting news. To go from the sublime to the terrifying, let's start with the topic you wanted to burn up in the green room, which is an announcement in Bloomberg by Bloomberg of the name of Meta's new high-end headset.
We now have a name for the higher end headset that comes from the people that make the Quest, and the obvious name of, they're going to call it the Quest Pro, which, okay, that's fine, logical, I guess, and obvious. And they have an expected price point of around $1,000.
Also well publicized at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you think of that, Charlie? What do you think of that price point for the device? You think that
I think it's expected. It's consistent with other high-end VR. It's how much better than the Quest is it, I think, is the fundamental question here, right? Because the most likely complaint is I spent $1,000 for something that's basically the same as what I've already got. Right. So it's going to have to do some tricks to justify it, but I think they've got a lot of those with eye tracking and other things.
Eye tracking and the high fidelity color.
Yeah, and the external cameras is a big deal, I think. So probably people will be fine, right? I mean, who's going to buy that thing? It's going to be you and me, not your casual XR user, who is most of the people who bought the $300 headset, my students, for example.
Well, and it's interesting because with every market, there is always a kind of a luxury category for that market. So yes, there'll be people in the industry like us.
I mean, some people like the special wristbands you get with your.
Yeah, and it'll make sense to them. Like they're not price sensitive. There's a whole category of people that are not price sensitive customers, that are performance sensitive customers and want the highest end device. It's like people that buy high-end sports cars and buy high-end anything else, right?
I think if it's noticeably better, they'll sell millions of.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to do well.
So do you read Scott Galloway's column?
Sometimes, not consistently, but off and on. You were mentioning something that.
Well, I mentioned that there was a member of the FCC a couple of weeks ago, one of their board, who was writing letters to the Biden administration about the danger of TikTok. And I mean, we've talked a lot about the danger of social media and in particular Meta's behavior. But we see that behavior and we understand what that company did for largely commercial purposes, as well as how easily that system was manipulated by bad actors. Yeah. But now we've got a non-transparent situation where TikTok is this huge, wonderful service, in my opinion, and it could be totally influencing us as Americans, turning us against each other, showing us things that influence us in invisible ways. This is not just news headlines, right? These are invisible things. So you would show more military stuff to a military-leaning person, even if the stuff was fun. So what do you think? Is that legitimate? Should we be worried about this? And what the hell could anybody do?
Well, you make an interesting point that the trials and tribulations of the artist formerly known as Facebook are well documented and fairly well known because of the fact that they're an American company and they have a level of transparency. So even with some of the ethical challenges, there's a level of transparency in what they do, right? TikTok doesn't have that level of transparency, and they are delivering on something that has massive media power now, without much sort of recourse for how do we put any kind of checks and balances in it, which I think is what Scott is referring to, right?
I think we have to go in the direction of the EU and give up some convenience in order to enjoy more security for the services that we like. Mm. So I think it's going to mean very powerful private companies are going to have to give up some control that they have really enjoyed. But I don't think we can live in a world where AI is running amok, doing things to us that we don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting big topic, right? Of what technology is doing, layers of technology applied to people's, like companies' use cases that are finding massive profits and massive viewership, and, can create potentially fairly dangerous influence dynamics.
So, exactly. So I'm terrified because I was deeply disturbed by what happened with Facebook. What has happened, not just, what they have caused, but, the ability for bad actors to game that system.
Yeah. And I think maybe part of it got caught up in, the previous administration's like approach to it, which was troublesome.
Well, right. Because it wasn't like, I want to make you safer. It was like, I want to figure out how to leverage this to make myself or my friends richer.
Correct. So, but now you have the current administration, which seems to have a better ethical code against it. So maybe we'll get something valuable in terms of.
Or it may be that the EU really takes the lead and anything we do really just mirrors what they do. So listen, let's go to something more fun. Bravo Ready 1. This is an infinite Royale NFT game. They just raised $3 million to expand it so it exists for you gamers out there. And I checked it out I gave it a cursory look, and it's the real deal. You pay $1 and you spawn into a battle royale where you earn Solana for each kill that you get.
Right. So as much as we are reticent to use the term, although we used it, of course, with Matthew when we talked about his book, The Metaverse, this is a metaverse application that is tied to the blockchain and tied to, the crypto earning world and the NFT world. And
well, it has an economy, right? It's a game metaverse.
Right. And this is one of many now, right, that are starting to spring up.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the company leading, or I should say the venture capital coming into this, a lot of it is Animoca Brands, which we talked about last week, that was involved in 2 big fundings for these kinds of Web3, let me call them, in a way, they're kind of like Second Life, right? They're browser based. Mm-hmm. They're more flexible than Second Life, which, not being mobile, is one of the reasons that their growth stalled in the 2000s. But these sites aren't like that. And Animoca's got, money in Star Citizen, right? Atlas Worlds, Dapper Labs, OpenSea, Axie, Infinity. I mean, this is like the hit parade of these Web3 gaming companies.
Yeah, I mean, Animoca has really sort of set themselves up as the most leaned in company in this category, in this sector, right? So if you view it through an investor lens and you believe in the thesis, they're a good investment because they, just like Tencent, a generation before them, leaned into a certain style of gaming and user culture and profited greatly from it, right? Will this be the profit dynamic that a lot of people believe? Maybe, maybe not. I learned an interesting term. I'm curious if this come past your radar, called rugging a few weeks ago.
No, tell me about rugging.
So rugging effectively is when you pull the rug out from somebody, right? And a lot of these NFT gaming dynamics are built on kind of a house of cards, right? And they all have the aspirations of becoming real. But
yeah, I mean, I think that the community, they're underestimating the difficulty of community management. Yeah. Just getting back to Bravo Ready 1. Yeah. I mean, what could go wrong in a pay to kill game like that is really huge.
I think you've
Because
just touched on the core challenge.
how do you keep people just from preying on weaker players
and making money on it, right?
and then the weaker players go away because that's no fun.
And you lose your social sense, and you lose your economy, and the whole thing gets rugged.
Yeah. So it's so anyway, let's bop over to Magic Leap 2. Finally released.
Yes, you and I have both worn it, and I think are dutifully impressed by it, right?
Yeah, well, it's a huge improvement over the Magic Leap 1.
Yes.
Partly because it doesn't need to do as much.
Right. And our friend Rody, a multi-time guest on our show, I think deserves massive credit for the journey that he has been on with all the changes in the
I know. Well, poor Rony knew all about Magic Leap 2 while he had to sell Magic Leap 1. Right. And I think that whether he admits it or not, that was hard because he's a big believer in this product and not as much in the first one.
It's a super hard category to build, and he deserves massive amounts of credit for the fortitude to stick with it through all the ups, downs, and sideways of it. And in the end equation, they will be an important part of the history of mixed reality.
Oh, now, will they
get to the other side? Still unknown, but the new
the history. Well, these are expensive headsets, but they're not. They're priced competitively with the HoloLens.
Yes, I mean it is definitely designed for an enterprise level customer and a non-price sensitive customer that believes in the future of mixed reality entertainment in some way, shape, or form, and will buy this today for a knowledge point that it will move, downstream in price at some point and become consumer. Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to my other headline, something I am genuinely excited about.
Okay.
The documentary film, We Met in VR, is coming to HBO. It was a hit at Sundance. They used a high-end PC, and they were filming people with high-end PCs and body trackers. But, all of that technology is becoming more widely available. And in fact, with the external facing cameras that we've been talking about, and a little dash of AI, you can soon get that kind of body tracking on the Quest. Right. And, these are a group of people for different reasons who live in VR. Most of them started for fun and then found friends and practical things to do. And so we really get a look inside of people who spend hours and hours a day in a very different kind of VR than you experience when you're on the Quest.
Right. And the thing
or in Horizons.
The thing that's exciting for me and a lot of the people that I work with that are in the quote unquote traditional media world is it's migrating from the fringes of festival demonstration into mainstream media, right? It's going to show up on a streaming service on HBO Max and have an audience that'll be very different than a sort of VR native or VR aware person. It's just another piece of content that you can check out on regular old television that was created inside a VR platform. So
there's a fellow named Bernhard Drax. We should get this guy on the show.
Good guess, right? Yeah.
He's a real character, Draxter, well-known character in Second Life, and was also working with Sansar. If you remember that thing Second Life, Linden Lab had tried to launch a social VR site, and it didn't catch on the way it needed to because PC VR was just not
too early.
A consumer product. Yeah, it was too early. But Draxter spent a lot of time on these platforms and ended up making a movie called Our Digital Selves. And it also was a documentary. And so I think the dirty little secret, if you would call it that, dirty is not the right word. The secret of the popularity of Second Life and what it enabled was for a lot of handicapped and housebound people to be whole and to have whole relationships. And some of these people are severely handicapped, quadriplegics, people who, live their lives on their backs. And so Second Life was for them this
gave them mobility,
reason to live,
gave them presence. Right.
Yeah. So I think this may have that quality and a bit more because of the characters are super engaging and the graphics are really good. Even, VR chat graphics with the PC are really quite powerful.
And, going back in time, I haven't watched it yet, but I watched the trailer for it because someone pointed it out to me. There was many years ago a documentary about Second Life, and there's a very young Philip Rosedale in the documentary, in the reel, talking about the aspirations of and what they were doing. It might be worth both of us to go back in the Wayback Machine and give that a watch because It's interesting. It's out
All
there.
right, so we've been running on this morning, but let's get to our guest, Jason Warnke, Accenture's Senior Managing Director of Global IT,
Sounds
and
good.
talk about the practical applications of XR.
Yeah.
He's loading in. Oh, he also has someone with him. Jason.
Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me?
We've got you. You are live on This Week in XR. I'm Charlie Fink. This is Ted Schilowitz. What a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to be here. Love your podcast. Thanks for having me.
Wow, thank you. We are flattered. It will get you everywhere with us. So the reason, sorry, Ted, go ahead.
We're excited to have you on, Jason. We track Accenture. We know a lot of people that work at Accenture, people that have had different stints at Accenture in this type of role. And Charlie and I are very much very bullish on the use of XR technology across training and enterprise sectors. We talk about it in some way, shape, or form almost every week. As Charlie's cat is walking by, for those that happen to be
most people are listening on
podcast.
iTunes, so they don't see the cat.
They don't see the cat, right? So tell us what you're up to, Jason, and what.
Yeah, the reason I asked Jason on was because Accenture was taking the lead in integrating XR into almost all the activities of the company, and they released a report about it. And somebody in comms reached out to me, and I said, "Yes, we talk about Accenture all the time. Let's get Jason on this show."
Excellent. Well, this is a fun story because, I play a role inside of Accenture's global internal IT organization we call Digital Experience Lead. And my team and I focus on the experiences that are near several, I guess, 700,000 plus people, which is an extraordinary number. I've been here 26 years, and that number was much smaller when I started ages ago. But we focus on the experiences that our people have day in and day out as they work at Accenture and work with our clients. And we, several years ago, and this is very common among any organizations that have been thinking about where extended reality might go in the future, we were experimenting with this in the internal IT organization for several years. I remember going to the IT investment board every year to talk about why I needed money to do some things with extended reality. And for several years, I got that smirk, like, I don't know why we would need to do anything in that space. It was in that time, it was all around like, what would the evolution of collaboration be? And we did all kinds of neat experimentation and tried all kinds of devices and things. And it wasn't really, and everyone has a similar sort of story over the past several years where there was a really critical business need, and that came along at the time that the space, technology-wise, had evolved quite tremendously. And our business case is Accenture hires more than 100,000 people a year. We used to be able to bring people physically together when they onboarded with Accenture to learn all about what we're about and the types of things that we do and how we serve our clients. And we certainly couldn't do that the way that we had before, bringing them to physical campuses or offices and get cohorts of people together to train them. And so we said we needed to do it in a more virtual way that was a little bit different than just what we're doing, right now at Teams or Zoom or WebEx sort of call. And we had this thought about, what if we brought them into as a part of, not fully as the only thing we would do, but what if as a part of onboarding, we brought them into a virtual world? And that's exactly what we've been doing, is using AltSpace as a mechanism for people, whether they have a headset or not. You probably have read, we purchased 60,000 headsets to distribute. We'll talk about that more, I'm sure. But the mechanism that we've been using is to onboard more than 150,000 people via AltSpace in what we call One Accenture Park. I was listening to your last episode about metaversities, and in many ways, this is Accenture's internal metaversity, One Accenture Park, as a part of our enterprise metaverse that we call the Nth Floor. We started to change the game in terms of the way we bring people in, and people, the reaction and the feedback on it has been phenomenal. People have loved the break from the 2D interactions when they can't be physically together. And they love that something special that you all know, and your listeners certainly know when they've been into extended reality experience. There's just something different, whether it's the spatial
Mm.
audio, whether it's the ability for people to be, moving about a space together and experiencing things together in that virtual space. The reaction and the feedback has been excellent. We see, because there's all kinds of studies, and Accenture's done some of these studies about the higher retention rate of the content that you're sharing. In the case of One Accenture Park, we bring people into an experience where they get assigned a virtual client, Global Coffee, and they have to go figure out how to help by learning about Accenture and what Accenture is all about. They have to go help this client with their challenges, and they go about this virtual world. They learn about these things, and they have that, because I've had it, because I've been in this space, that I knew exactly where I learned about that this set of technology trends that I needed to know about at that very exhibit. And I can picture that exhibit in my mind's eye, and I was experiencing that with other people, which helps even more. So there's something really magical about what we're seeing already, and we think it's only something that will get better and better over time.
So you brought up some really interesting points. My first curiosity is, with that many people that you're moving through potentially their first VR experience, are you often sending out headsets to those folks as an onboarding experience physically? Do you actually mail them headsets and do a little training beforehand? How do they get into it? And then the second part is, would you say is the percentage of those employees? Sounds like a lot of employees you're onboarding every month, right? New employees that see continued value of this and ask that they can make this part of their world or part of what they're going to do with the clients that they're assigned to, the work they're assigned to. Like, how would you define that as a percentage? Would you define that as a level of success of introducing them to Accenture through a VR platform? And how sticky is it? Do they ask to continue the journey?
Yeah, I love it. So I'll start with the first question. In the countries where we can do the headset deployments, which is not a ton at the moment, we do, as a part of their onboarding package, send them out the headset, and it's a really cool unboxing experience. And what we've been surprised by, maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but all those pictures make their way onto social media. It's super cool for the
Right.
for the folks coming in to share that with the world, that either they get a laptop, they get a headset, and they start that experience where they can. And where they can't do headsets yet, they can. What the great thing about a platform like AltSpace is, they can interact via their laptop. So they can download the app, or that's part of our standard laptop seat, and they can interact that way. Certainly the headset adds something special. And what we found there was, as I'm sure you well know and your listeners know, is the onboarding experience. If this is their very first time using a headset, it is more. There's a lot more there to it than meets the eye, and has required a lot of focus on change management, adoption, teams to help people with here's the simple way to do it. And that's getting better and better.
I think if you don't know anything about video games, if you've never played a video game, there are a lot of things that are not intuitive.
Mm.
And, we make a lot of assumptions because of who we are. Because I think setting up, and I have students who have struggled with it, and it always surprises me, but it's always people who don't have a game console, who haven't gone through similar friction or have been raised to understand these kinds of interfaces, right? Because it's not a normal interface, it's a spatial interface. And by the way, VR can make people sick. It just does. And so I've found in my informal experience, probably about 10% of people are never going to be comfortable in VR.
That's about the same we've seen. And even those that are super comfortable can do it for a certain period of time, and then they just need to go back to normal mechanisms. And that's what's great about something like AltSpace, is I can be in there for a while in a headset and then say, hey, I'm going to join via my PC, and I can sort of be fine with that. So then to your Ted, your second question around how sticky is it after they've gone through that experience? What we've created a program called Project Avatar, and that's our ongoing program to keep people engaged. Because what often will happen after they go through that, or could have happened if we didn't do this way, is they get the headset, they go through the experience, they're like, okay, great, I've got a headset, and now what do I do? And so we've got this constant set of, we call them missions, where they get to go learn new things, take immersive learning courses, play Supernatural or other games like that, and really create a community where they're learning through doing and having those experiences. And then what we've been just amazed by is as people go through those experiences, they get more comfortable, both by trying new things, but also by repetition. They come up with the use cases that they want to then bring to their clients or use for other use cases around Accenture. And that's what's amazing. So for every one thing we bring someone into, they then come up with 10 ideas for what they could be doing in another part of their job or with their client. And that's what's super cool, is that like the ideas are being fed by the community, and we're taking those to our clients. We're taking those to other parts of Accenture. So that's a really important part of this sort of program. And I think it's something we anticipated, but I'll just echo, underscore the importance is the change management, journey management, and the constant support of your organization to do this is so critically important. In many ways, it's the tougher part of the job than the technology. And technology is not an easy part. There's a ton of friction, and for an IT shop to support, as expansive a deployment as we've done, there's a lot there. But man, there's a whole lot more on the journey and change management.
It sounds like you develop in one of the game engines and then upload the content or the spaces you create onto AltSpace, which, for individuals, free hosting is huge. It probably matters less to you. So do you have a corporate space? There's no, and also, are these like regular Quest headsets that you tether to your smartphone, or are they managed centrally and they're the business version?
Yeah. So one of the things, and this is where, we're out ahead and realize that there's still a lot of challenges from that perspective. So they are consumer headsets, and we require then our employees to, be comfortable signing up. I heard on your previous episode, and that's a friction point with any of these sorts of things, especially the Quest headsets, is that people have to sign up with a personal account. But we are very eagerly looking forward to the entire space getting more enterprise friendly, and at the same time getting more frictionless for the employee to sort of have the business profile and the personal profile if they want to play games in their personal profile, and then do work things. So, I think there's a whole lot more to come. We've learned a whole lot. We've given great feedback to our partners in this space around how you make that easier. But right now there's so much friction, just like you said, just getting into the headset, getting into the application, then logging into the space. There's so many different steps, and there doesn't need to be that many steps. And I think, we'll get to a point where it's just the one-click join in the right profile, and you're safe and secure, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about friction, as Charlie and I would think, and probably you, Jason, because you've been in it long enough, as a sliding scale. If we remember our first attempts at trying to do this with early Rifts and early Vives, when you had to set up cameras and sensors, track the room and connect it to a PC, that was real friction, right? Today, there are still levels of friction with a Quest, but they are extraordinarily low compared to just a couple of years ago, right? So that's sort of a big change. The question I had also is, obviously you're a global enterprise, right? So it sounds like you standardized on using Quest 2s in the West, yes? But do you also look at devices like the Pico for parts of Asia and other areas where you couldn't easily use a Quest, but you could maybe use a Pico device or something that had similar?
Yeah, we're exploring. Quest has been our primary. We're exploring all kinds of other. We think this space is going to get, crowded in a good way. It's gonna benefit, consumers and enterprises with having a lot of choice. And there's a lot of players getting into this. So we're obviously exploring devices like the Pico in our other parts of the world, but right now primarily on the Quest. The thing I was gonna. Yeah, the thing I was going to mention on the friction point, I always relate this to like early days of, remember interacting with a flip phone with WAP applications to like check a stock in early days on a mobile device was a pain. And we did it, and we were like okay with it. And we said like, yeah, it'll get better. But just that sort of evolution and that short.
Let me tell you about getting onto the internet in 1990.
Yeah, it's like, remember when you had to unplug your phone and plug it into the modem?
Yeah, I mean, and remember how many different apps you had to fire up to actually use it, starting with your modem itself.
Right. Yeah. So that's
right. And then And that's why we say, like, yes, you're feeling friction now, but you know how great the industry is at reducing that in a very way quicker than you'd imagine.
Yeah.
So before you know it, this will just be as easy as just putting on glasses and you're off.
So how has this affected your clients?
Yeah, our clients are fascinated with this because I think, like us, they had been or have been experimenting or thinking about where extended reality might fit in their business. And we refer to this whole space, the metaverse space, as a continuum. There's everything from, getting engaged with virtual reality training, like we're doing, and onboarding, like we're doing. There's people are using it to create digital twins of their offices so they can design and iteratively design, or their
What is
factory
Accenture
floors.
One? Is it a digital twin or is it a more bespoke place?
Bespoke right now, but what we've done, and this is an example of where when we did this, we said, wait, what if we actually brought, as soon as the CAD designs were available for the offices that we're building, what if we brought those into Altspace and we could have design meetings with our distributed team in Altspace, walking around a real space. So we did this, the first time we did this was with our huge office in New York, One Manhattan West. And we started to bring those in. We started to have collaborative design sessions with our stakeholders, and we would make design decisions because we were in that space together, walking around like, oh, I don't like where that screen is. It should be over here. Or that room needs to be oriented different. And that was a game changer because the way we had done it prior was you got everyone into room, you looked over plans, and then it wasn't until you got into the space finally, and then everyone realized, that's not the right way to do it. It saved us a lot of time and effort by being able to do that. So in that case, ultra realistic. In fact, it's so realistic that when I had spent over a year in that space, in Altspace, and then when I went to the physical office, it had been like I'd been there forever, because I knew that space so well. But One Accenture Park is an example. That's a fantastical, magical fantasy land sort of space. It's very Epcot-like in its design. And we love the balance.
Can we go there? Can you get us in there, or can we meet you there?
I would love to do that. We could definitely host you and show you around, because I think,
okay,
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, we'll have a follow up. I'm learning a lot from this conversation. So thanks again for coming. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. So let me ask you a question that a lot of our listeners probably are wondering, especially the students who I assign to listen to this podcast. What was your journey to your current? Sounds like you have one of the coolest jobs at Accenture. So what was your journey? How long have you been there? And where do you think we're going with this? So, for someone who's who's 30, where are they going to be when they're my age?
Yeah, I love it. So I started right out of school. I was a marketing major, and I got right into, I was a technical oriented business major. I always
so you like data
programming. I did. Programming. I was early days of web development, so I had a passion for doing that, and I started to get into like, hey, maybe there's a technical path for me in business. And then I heard about this company at the time, Anderson Consulting, and that was that was years ago, 1996, and I started. And I was developing platforms for large, in my case, utility clients. I did that for years and years and years, and progressed through my career. And I was always a super, creative, more of a creative mind that was technical. And I had the pleasure of, yeah, exactly. I had the pleasure of meeting a leader that thought that there may be an opportunity for us changing the game in the way that we support our collaboration and video capabilities inside of Accenture. I always had a passion for movie making and podcasts and podcast development and things like that. And he said, I think I've got a role for you inside of IT. And 5 or 6 years later, I've now evolved into playing this role where we're driving next generation experiences and helping to provide and measure great experiences for the things that our people do every day. As a part of that, extended reality was in that, and it just so happens that it's gotten this big. So I feel very fortunate to be at that crossroads of sort of the creative side and the experience side with technology, and playing a role inside of IT. It's been a phenomenal career, and I've loved it. It's a great role.
Charlie, with the time we have left, Jason, would you have the ability to mention one of your client journeys that is public that you can talk about that started from your belief in this modality of using VR for training and deliverables into something that moved outside? You talked a lot about the employee use case, but clearly you're a client-driven organization, right? So do you have like one call out that you can, so that listeners can go, oh, I get it. Like, this is an interesting corporate use case that I can see applying to my corporation, or how I would do this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because they're all underway right now, there's several that are taking the same formula that we've been doing with onboarding, and we're working with major global brands on this very thing. I can't unfortunately mention the names,
Okay,
but
we'll have you
their
back
names.
when you can.
Well,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Jason, so let's wrap up with the last question. Where
Sure.
do you think 10, 20, 30 years will be?
Wow. That's a great question. I mean, certainly on this
Because
particular
30 years
topic,
ago, Google hadn't even been invented, right?
That's right. That's right. No, I think, sort of from the position that I play, we've seen an evolution in IT where it's gone from big central, that the IT team needed to do everything, to this evolution towards citizen development. And that was a very sort of technically oriented thing. And I think as this evolution where I think through the metaverse, we're now sort of saying, hey, the creatives out there, the game designer types, the artists, now can have a bigger role to play about creating the venues by which and where business happens. And so what's cool about that is citizen development will start to go into this same sort of metaverse building space as well, which means it's and I think Meta has shown some really cool stuff about how easy it will be to create spaces, virtual spaces, just by virtue of talking an idea or typing an idea, and all of a sudden the world gets created. Right now, you need really sophisticated platforms and developers to do that. And I think we get to a place where spinning up a virtual world where you can, conduct business with your colleagues internally, or sell and do business with your customers externally, will be something that citizen developers can do in an organization. And I think that evolution away to a more distributed model where keeping up with the trends in the market that an IT shop traditionally needed to do now go in the hands of the business runners and those that are on the front lines. I, as an IT guy, I'm not threatened by that. I'm encouraged and optimistic about that world. I think that's where we need to go, just to be more agile. And with this metaverse extended reality space, I think that's where the creatives really get to get engaged and have some fun.
Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. Ted, great to see you. As always, good conversation this morning. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.